Okay, so today's Parsha is the longest Parsha in the Holy Torah. Before I get rolling, just a reminder, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to YouTube, please subscribe to YouTube. It helps us out tremendously. We are getting more subscribers, and we'll let you know it really helps the algorithm and getting out the message that we have, that it's a beautiful universal message of connection with God and connection with humanity, without a whole lot of unnecessary religious baggage. Thank God that He gives us the Torah that is true for sure. As I was saying, the largest parsha in the Holy Torah, and the question is, what is the significance? Now, obviously, if you've done any preparation this week, reading any of the text, you'll see there are plenty of commentary as to its intricacy of the text and the detail on so many different areas. And it would be easy to sort of really kind of get buried in the whole text, and it kind of be confusing. But I like to take a look, like what I call a satellite look view of a text, and see if I can see what the landscape shows. It's just the way I kind of like looking at text, it says by itself. Now, let's look at this idea that the Parsha has hidden within it the format that will bring out the righteous Mashiach before he comes. That means that there is inside this text a very hidden secret that I'm going to share with each one of you guys, including myself, to try to analyze what is Hashem telling us. Now, we know that what takes place in the midst of this, or at the end of this, is the Aaronic blessing. It's the blessing that is given to the Jewish people. There's Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. As a matter of fact, we're in this time right now in the year where we have the giving of the Torah, and we have the study of Torah throughout the night. And this whole idea is that this Torah is to be read during this week of great elevation. It says in the text, the Zohar, it says the voice of the turtle is heard in the land, and this turtle dove, or the voice of the turtle dove heard in the land, the Zohar tells us it's actually the Mashiach himself. Is that what we're going to be hearing is the voice of Mashiach in the land. Now, as the Parsha takes a long time to read, it takes a long time for Mashiach to be revealed. As the Day of Atonement seems to be a long day. For example, thinking about, and we've been contemplating, have asked the question several times to different rabbis about the red heifer. And, what's the status of the red heifer right now? And is there a cow? And how many cows are there? And how many are actual candidates? And then we start thinking, I heard someone the other day says, oh, well, they sacrifice, or I'm going to sacrifice the red heifer on this particular day at this particular time. And I went, it didn't sound a little off. And the reason why is because this whole idea of the red heifer is a very complicated thing, and it takes time to do. And so the question would be is, how long does atonement take? And what entails in that? It says, but the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, it says, I shall sprinkle the water on you, and you shall be clean, just as a fountain renders unclean, so does Hashem make Israel clean. Or so that is it, that through the ashes of the red heifer they are made clean. It says, may we all receive the water of Torah, as we've understand is the water of Torah is the purity that is poured upon us through the Torah. Now, in this parsha, the first mention is to the family of Levi. Now, what has to take place? The first thing that needs to take place for Mashiach to reveal himself or come is that there needs to be what we call a rec and ordering of the camp. Now, if you remember seeing any pictures during your study, the camp was very well laid out in this sort of grid, almost a clockwork grid of the 12 tribes being around the tabernacle, and then Israel around, or the nations around Israel. And this whole idea is that the priest had to do their thing, the duties of the Kohanim, before the rest of Israel could reach atonement. There had to be actions done by the Kohen Gadol. And this is obviously reflected in the Yom Kippur service of the temple. And at first, the Kohen Gadol offers a bullock as a sin offering for himself and his family. And then he can go and bring a sin offering as a goat to atone for all of Israel. Now, in the Parsha, after the explanation of the Levite and the Kohen's duties, then laws are given to concerning the purity of the camp itself, as by the duties that were given to Israel to reach this level of atonement. Next, we're given two really interesting texts that I wondered, what did it have to do with Matan Torah, the giving of Torah, and also the effectiveness of the Aaronic or the priestly blessing? And we look at these two subjects that come up. One is Sota. You remember Sota. The next is the Nazir. The Nazir and Sota. So the Sota, we remember, is the test of the adulterous person, the person who is suspected of infidelity. And there would be an ultimate test. And the test would be to take water from the tabernacle, from the temple itself, or the tabernacle. And there the priest would go through a process of taking dirt from the floor and mixing it. And the person drinks from this potion. And it is basically to determine whether they are far off, having exiled themselves in relationship to their spouse, or they had not. And if they had, it starts in the thighs and ends up in the stomach, the condition. And so, which sort of gives us an idea that there's a message being presented to those of us who study the Torah and study this text and wonder, why is this text so important at this time of year for not only the people of Israel, but for every human being? First, what is Sota? The blessing which we may receive from Hashem and the blessings that we receive from Hashem are infinite, and therefore have to have a proper foundation. So let's look at the two mitzvahs that precede the blessing of the Kohanim that we'll talk about at the end, and the source of guidance that help us prepare to receive the blessings of Hashem in our life. Now, we all know the practical applications of anything that is good is worth working for. Anything worth developing is going to have a great reward. For example, just human maturity itself, being an adult who learns from his or her mistakes, is important. Well, imagine a society of righteous people that learn by their mistakes and learn by the things that they've done wrong, or they've even tested themselves. Now, first, concerning the mitzvah of Sota. Now, as we said, it's an adultery offering in essence. Sota in the holy language means to go astray. So the first test of being able to receive what I call the unadulterated, authentic Torah in our life is to test our own faithfulness, to question our own faithfulness to not only Torah, but to Hashem. We have to ask ourselves, where is our heart in our relationship? Are we close, or have we exiled ourselves in our relationship with the master of the universe. Now, this is similar to what the Fredika Rebbe said. He says, a Jew acting in any other way than fulfilling the Torah, ask of him is suffering. I'm sorry. The Torah ask of him is suffering from an illness or from acting against the Torah. It says, Menachem Mendel tells us that the adulterous woman in the mitzvah of the Sota is representative of the sins of Israel. Now, we all understand that this text is pausing. It's not just to talk about a woman who has infidelity issues. This is actually a metaphor speaking of the nation of Israel and its faithfulness to Hashem. Before we can receive the blessings of the Kohanim, before we can receive the blessings that come through the actions of the Kohanim, we have to, as righteous people, be righteous. Or as the Jewish people are being called to test their mettle, to test their connection with the Holy One, blessed be He. So the first thing that we need to do, as a world and society, if we would begin to examine ourselves and ask ourselves, are we truly faithful to that which is pure, that which is holy, that which is full of compassion and kindness to other people? If we're committed to that, then we are also in tune to be able to bring upon ourselves the infinite blessings of Mashiach, which would ultimately, hopefully, God willing, be the age of Mashiach that will come. Now, if the Sota represents all the transgressions of the sin of Israel, there's another one that comes up that's quite interesting. Stand by 1 second. Sorry about the interruption. There's a chihuahua that can scratch louder than you can imagine on the door. So we have the first one, which is Sota, which is testing the veracity of one's relationship. So just remember that if we want to imbue ourselves with the presence of Hashem and be able to understand Torah and to receive its highest wisdom, we first need to test our own veracity and faith to the Holy One, blessed be He. Next, the Nazir. Now, we've all heard the Nazir, the Nazirite vow, the person who decides to stay away from strong drink of any kind. As a matter of fact, just about anything that ferments, they stay away from. They don't cut their hair. They allow their hair to grow. And in general, we look at this, think this is a pretty big commitment. This is a person who's really made a strong vow. But we find in our studies, and surprisingly so, all of us found it quite surprising, that this was not the most admirable thing to do. That why would you do something that God didn't command you to do? I mean, it's very interesting. Yet the Nazirite vow is in there, and it is explained through the gematria, through the Gemara, that people who would tend to do this was an individual who was really concerned that they would sort of fall off the wagon, that they would go and do things that their inclination was pushing them to do. So what they would do is build a fence around that issue. For example, let's say that a person feels like I can't drink alcohol or do narcotics because if I do, it causes me to do immoral things. And therefore, I don't want to do the immoral thing. I'm just going to become a teetotaler. I'm not going to drink any alcohol at all. That would be like a Nazirite vow. But the person that's doing that is doing it because they sense they have an inherent weakness that if they don't do it, they can succumb to the weakness. I mean, and the most famous of those Nazirites was Shimshon. Very powerful man. But the idea is we're told in this text that there are two solutions for a person that is really wanting to endow themselves with the presence of Hashem and the wisdom of Hashem. Number one, the test of faithfulness. We have to test our faithfulness. We have to ask ourselves, have we been the harbinger of negative things and negative thoughts that have created distance in our relationship with the Holy One, blessed be He? All of us have relationships, either in marriage or just in friendships, and we understand that you have to maintain a relationship. You have to remain or maintain the contact in the relationship. And if you are wanting to receive the great revelation of Torah this year at Matan Torah and the giving of the Torah, then by all means, we have got to test our faithfulness to Hashem. Second is we've got to also know that we have Achilles' heels and we have issues that would require us to double down and make a commitment for an extra level of sanctification before the Holy One. Now, at the lower level, the Nazirite vow is like I said, taken by people who prone toward illicit relationships, and it's not a bad idea, actually. I mean, there are people that I know that will not violate their own particular moral oath because they're concerned at what they will do. For example, a person that doesn't drink, just won't drink at all, period, has never drunk because they are too concerned that they will fail at it. I admire someone who has that level of tenacity. And we have to understand that the Nazirite vow was completely voluntary. You weren't required to do it. But what is this text telling us is that before we can fully receive the wisdom of the Torah, then we have also got to be able to voluntarily restrict ourselves and voluntarily bring ourselves into alignment with Hashem and His desires in our life. And one of the interesting things about the act of holiness or sanctification is that it opens our eyes to see and to help clearly see who we are. It humbles us. It causes us to put things in perspective. So my encouragement for the next week as we go through this time of the elevation of Torah and the study of Torah is really begin to examine ourselves and to find out how we can connect at a deeper level, either by testing our faith and emunah in Hashem, and next, our sense of holiness and sanctification before Hashem. Two very important tests. Okay, that brings it down to the end. Who would like to add to or provide some commentary or whatever you'd like? Now would be a time to do it.